I was 23 when my family told me I was finally old enough to collect my first wife, a moment they celebrated with pride, while all I felt was a nauseating dread I had spent my entire life hiding. Her name was Fatima, my cousin, 13 years old with eyes too large for her face and a body still in transition between childhood and adolescence. My aunt boasted of her early development, as if the swelling of a child's chest and the stain in her undergarments marked an upgrade in livestock. In my family, the rule was unspoken but ironclad. Once a girl bled, she could breed, and the transition from dollhouse to dowry was instantaneous. I was 9 when I watched my eldest brother, Ahmed, marry a 12-year-old girl on his 21st birthday, and by the time I was 15, she was dead, buried beneath a small white tombstone that whispered of pregnancy complications while everyone else called it God's will. By then Ahmed was already onto his third bride, each younger than the last. At every family gathering, my uncles would flaunt their wives like prized hunting trophies. Mine was 11. Uncle Kareem would announce, brandishing a photo like a winning lottery ticket. Mine still had her baby teeth. Uncle Hassan would grin. We had to special order her wedding ring. It didn't come in sizes that small. I would sit through these grotesque show and tells with a frozen smile, my stomach clenching tighter with every laugh and slap on the back, pretending I was proud, pretending I was excited, pretending I didn't want to run until my lungs gave out. Everyone in the family played along. The women grieved in private but enforced the rules in public. The elder brothers obeyed until they became fathers, and the younger boys like me learned to swallow our disgust. Any deviation meant exile, not just for me, but for my mother, my sister, and every female relative in my household. I had seen it before. An older cousin once refused a match and vanished within a week. Rumors whispered that she had been sent to Yemen for reform. No one dared ask questions. When Fatima got her first period, her mother threw a celebration. She wore a gold anklet and a veil too large for her head, and everyone congratulated me as though I'd earned a medal. I avoided her eyes for weeks, but 3 months before the wedding date, I found her alone in the utility room with a bottle of bleach in her lap. Her hands were trembling so hard she couldn't unscrew the cap, and when she saw me, she didn't scream or hide. It was worse. She dropped to her knees and begged, "Please don't tell. I just can't. I know what happens." Her voice cracked with memories she was too young to carry. I sat beside her on the dusty tile floor and whispered, for the first time aloud, "I don't want this either." She blinked at me, stunned, like I had uttered a forbidden spell, and then she hugged me with the desperation of someone drowning. "Tell them I'm crazy," she whispered. "Tell them I'm cursed. They won't want me if they think I'm mad." That was the moment everything changed. Because she was right. Our family obsessed over bloodlines, about genetic purity and building strong sons, but mental illness was their deepest fear. It was the ultimate contamination. I had seen proposals dissolve over the mention of a distant aunt who once talked to shadows. That night I began coaching Fatima. We started small, twitching at dinner, scribbling symbols with her nails on the bathroom walls, mumbling numbers in corners. Soon she could pull her eyes back until only the whites showed, speak in tongues about demons in the wallpaper, and sit in catatonic silence during meals. My mother panicked. "She was normal 2 weeks ago," she sobbed to my father. "Now she's dangerous. What if it spreads to the other children?" They quietly postponed the wedding, and that one delay spread like wildfire. Within a month, my 14-year-old sister Amira came to me. Then Noor's sister. Then Maryam. Soon, I was running secret coaching sessions from my car, teaching young girls how to simulate madness to escape forced marriages. Stare through people, not at them. Laugh without reason. Rock back and forth. Save the biggest breakdowns for when wedding talks begin. Some were naturals. My cousin Isla invented an imaginary friend and scolded her during family dinners. Maryam was quieter, but when I told her to think about her wedding night and scream, she unleashed a sound that made the windows rattle. Within 6 months, we were 15 strong, each girl performing an escalating theater of madness. Engagement ceremonies descended into chaos. Girls convulsed, chanted, wept at invisible figures. Healers were summoned. Religious men waved incense while parents whispered about curses. I thought we could keep it going forever. We were protecting each other, older girls coaching younger ones. We had a system, but my family might have been cruel, but they weren't stupid. They started noticing the patterns, how only marriageable girls went mad, how I was always nearby when episodes happened. Suspicion was growing. And then came the night of Sarah's engagement. Sarah's engagement was supposed to be our masterpiece, our most convincing performance yet. The plan was meticulous. She'd start twitching during the blessing ceremony, collapse mid-prayer, mutter something about the groom's dead wife haunting her. We even planted old Arabic writings on parchment beneath her mattress, to be found later, feeding rumors of a possession. But something unexpected happened. When her name was called and she stepped forward in her soft peach-colored dress, Sarah looked across the room and locked eyes with Fatima. That single glance changed everything. Her hand dipped into her pocket. A second later, she was swallowing pills, an entire fistful. No cue, no script, just raw desperation. Panic detonated like a grenade. I was the first to scream. Call 911. 20 pills. Her father knelt beside her, shaking her violently, yelling at her to vomit, while she kept whispering the groom's age, 45. The paramedics arrived, and the engagement hall became a battlefield. Men shouted. Women wailed. Young girls huddled against walls, wide-eyed. Through the confusion, I saw it. One paramedic had paused, phone raised discreetly, snapping pictures of the child-sized throne on stage, the little wedding bangles laid out like toys. Fatima rose from her seat slowly, abandoning her vacant stare. Her voice, unused in months, rang through the chaos. She took 20 pills because she's being sold to a 45-year-old man. The room fell still, sucked into a black hole of silence, and then exploded. Parents dragged daughters toward exits. Chairs crashed. Someone set papers ablaze in the kitchen sink. The stink of smoke and fear and sandalwood incense burned my throat. Amid the chaos, I watched Sarah's hand clench around something as she was lifted onto a gurney. The EMT struggled to open it, but her grip was iron. Uncle Hassan seized my arm and hissed through his teeth. "You did this?" His thumb digging into my pulse, his other hand texting frantically. I caught a glimpse of his phone screen, group chat title, Emergency Protocol. My legs nearly gave out. This wasn't panic. This was strategy. They had a plan for girls who rebelled. "She's 14, the EMT asked sharply, inserting in 4. "How old is she?" A beat. The men hesitated, eyes flicking toward exits. No one answered. That silence was damning. Just as the gurney rolled past me, Sarah's hand relaxed, dropping a small black flash drive labeled Insurance. Her eyes fluttered open briefly. No sound left her lips, but I read them anyway. "Check your car." Then she was gone. At the hospital, I wasn't allowed near her. Her father told the staff she had been unwell for months. Delusional, paranoid, hallucinating. Security stopped me at her door. "Family only," the guard said apologetically. My phone buzzed constantly. Girls from our network were being locked in basements, closets, their madness now used against them as proof they were too unstable for school or society. "They say it's for our protection," Isla texted. "Until the episodes stop." That night, I checked my car. At first I saw nothing, then found it, wrapped in a plastic bag, tucked into the glove box. Sarah's notebook. Dozens of pages in her neat handwriting. Marriage contracts, dates, ages, names, deaths, marked with red circles. 5 years of evidence. The phone rang. Unknown number. "You've been alone with underage girls in your car," a man's voice said coldly. "What do you think that looks like? Teaching them to act, to lie. You sound like a predator." My blood ran cold. I understood the game now. They wouldn't deny the girl's madness. They'd use it, reframe it, make me the corrupter. Child Services called the next day. Someone filed a report. Inappropriate relationships with minors. My boss overheard the call and told me not to return to work. When I got home, my childhood journals were scattered across my bed. Pages inserted between mine. The handwriting was close but off. Twisted entries about girls. Fantasies. My mother stood in the doorway, calm. "I've been documenting your illness since you were 13, she said. Just in case. She was building the trap for years. I realized every odd glance, every innocent joke, every hug from a cousin had been recontextualized in secret, warped into evidence. They were erasing me. At dinner, my little cousin Aaliyah stood and announced I was sick like the girls. She parroted Uncle Hassan's exact words. "He touched our minds," she recited. "Made us broken." The teacher at the next table noticed. Flinched. The seed was planted. The final blow came online. Video from Sarah's engagement, carefully edited. Just me whispering to girls, triggering chaos. No context. Comments called me a monster. My face circulated in group chats. The family lawyer filed for conservatorship. They claimed I was a delusional cult leader manipulating children. I accessed our family WhatsApp using my late brother Ahmed's old account. He'd asked about his first wife's accident days before his death. His last message had gone unanswered. 3 days later, his car crashed. Break lines. No investigation. In the chat, I found instructions about moving documents to a storage unit. Evidence. I needed that location. But Uncle Hassan's email was protected. To access it, I'd have to get close. I went to the only ally left. Kareem, my childhood friend, now a police officer. He met me at our old park. "A federal warrant's coming," he said. "They think you're running a cult. Leave town." But how could I? The girls were still inside the machine. So I went to the news. The journalist listened until I named names. Then her face hardened. Her boss's niece was married to one of the families. The story was killed. At the hospital, Sarah's condition worsened. She needed surgery. Her parents refused consent unless she recanted. The doctors were helpless. Her pulse dropped. The system had her in its teeth. 5 allied families began pulling their daughters from school. Mothers started homeschooling. Social media filled with warnings about mental contagion and cultural attacks. They were mobilizing like an army. They were winning. Until one night, Fatima appeared at my door. Fatima stood in my doorway at 3:07 a.m., still wearing her nightgown, a small backpack clutched to her chest. Her eyes were wild with panic. "They moved up the wedding," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Tomorrow morning. I stole these." She unzipped the bag to reveal a crushed pack of birth control pills, some emergency cash, and a phone with the SIM card removed. I stared at her in disbelief, both horrified and amazed at her bravery. She was just 13, a child. But already she understood what was at stake more than many grown men ever would. Her brothers would track her to me soon. We both knew it. I gave her my car keys and the last of my cash. "Drive to the women's shelter on Madison. Ask for Jennifer. She knows what we're dealing with. Come with me," she begged, grabbing my wrist. "They'll follow me. You'll be safer alone." We both knew that wasn't true, but I let her go anyway. 20 minutes later, her brothers found the car 2 blocks away. They dragged her from the driver's seat, screaming and fighting, her voice raw with truth. She shouted everything, the marriages, the acting, the threats, until one of them covered her mouth and hauled her into a van. Neighbors watched from behind curtains. No one called the police. No one ever did. That morning, Uncle Hassan came to my door with 2 plainclothes men standing behind him, arms crossed, faces unreadable. "Leave the country," he said simply. "We'll buy your ticket. Or stay and watch Fatima's wedding tonight." I refused, and they left like it was a formality. That evening, I watched the live stream. Fatima stood next to a man old enough to be her grandfather. The same dead-eyed stare she had once practiced was now real. Her arms hung limp at her sides. Her veil slipped at one point, and no one moved to fix it. The ceremony moved on like machinery. Her new husband smiled at the camera. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. A screenshot of a forged psychiatric evaluation, my name, diagnosis, delusional disorder, risk to minors. Signed by Dr. Rashid, the same man who married my cousin Layla. The network had begun reshaping reality. That evening at the hospital, I ran into Priya, not my ex-girlfriend who now followed Uncle Hassan like a loyal shadow, but another Priya, Sarah's nurse. She asked me to meet her in the hospital's basement utility corridor during her break. There, in the soft blue glow of the emergency exit sign, she rolled up her pant leg, scars wrapped around her ankle like bracelets. "Chains," she said. "I escaped a similar marriage 10 years ago. I've been watching what's happening, documenting everything." She revealed what I feared most. This wasn't isolated to my family. It spanned 3 states, interconnected through intermarriages, old-school alliances, and synchronized cover-ups. The abuse was a system, self-healing, self-protecting. I asked her what we could do. She pulled out a file folder with labeled tabs, timelines, family trees, financial transactions, real estate properties used for hidden ceremonies. "Expose them," she said. "But you'll need more." The next day, I returned home to find every drawer in my apartment overturned. My laptop was gone. My backup drive smashed. Spray painted on the wall was a single word in Arabic: traitor. That evening, Aliyah's school called to tell me she hadn't shown up. Her teacher had filed a concern. I knew where she was. Hidden, prepped, and likely already betrothed. Every phone call from the girls sounded more desperate. "They've taken my phone. My uncle's coming tomorrow with the contract. I think they're going to send me abroad." One by one, they were being disappeared. Even Amira, my own sister, had gone silent. Her Instagram updated with a photo of her standing behind our mother, her face expressionless, her caption reading, "Healing at home. Thank you for the prayers." I knew that face. I trained that expression. But now it wasn't a mask. It was her prison. Uncle Hassan began showing up at my workplace again, this time with Priya, my Priya, on his arm. She wore a delicate necklace with a pendant I recognized. It matched the child-sized wedding rings from our family's legacy box. She avoided eye contact. He didn't. He smiled at me. My coworkers whispered, watching the interactions. The rumors spread like oil in water. Then came the email. An anonymous report to Child Protective Services, accusing me of luring young girls into false friendships. It claimed I was a danger to children, that I manipulated them psychologically to fulfill fantasies of power and control. The investigator left a voicemail. "You need to call us back within 24 hours, or we will proceed without your statement." I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. They were turning the truth inside out. Every rescue became a crime. Every lie we told to survive was now being used to bury us. The girls were drowning, and the only rope we had left was the one they were using to hang us. I drove to the mosque. It was Friday. Hundreds of men bowed in prayer, their heads to the carpet. I stood in the back, waited until the sermon began, then shouted, "They're selling our daughters. Sarah is being married to a 45-year-old man. They are not sick. They're being trafficked." Silence. Then shouting. I was dragged out onto the steps, pushed hard enough that my head cracked against stone. But not everyone was angry. Some of the younger men looked away, ashamed. Women from the upstairs gallery peered down, some crying silently. I lay there bleeding, the call to prayer still echoing overhead, while my phone vibrated beside me. A photo of Amira holding a sign. "My brother is sick. He made us sick too." The lie was becoming law. But in that moment, lying on the mosque steps, I made a choice. I would burn the entire system to the ground before I let it swallow another girl. I disappeared after the mosque incident. Not because I was hiding, but because I needed time to regroup, to find a crack in the walls they'd built around me and the girls. My face had spread across social media like a wanted poster. My name now appeared in hushed tones during community meetings, WhatsApp groups filled with edited footage showing me coaching girls into delusions, videos that cut off just before the truth emerged. Every truth I had nurtured had been choked by strategic lies, leaving behind a version of me I didn't recognize. The one people whispered about, the manipulative predator, the mentally unstable agitator. I checked into a roadside motel 2 towns over, the kind that didn't ask for ID as long as you paid in cash. There, I spent hours piecing together what evidence I still had. Sarah's notebook had survived. I scanned every page, uploaded every photo, and encrypted everything in multiple cloud drives under aliases I hoped even my own family couldn't trace. But they had eyes everywhere. At dawn, I spotted Uncle Hassan's car parked across the street. That's when I realized the network didn't just control girls, they controlled narrative, mobility, perception. My brother Ahmed had once started questioning things too. His final message in the family group chat came back to me. What really happened to Layla? 3 days later, his car veered off a bridge. That crash had been ruled accidental, but I now understood accidents in our family were often scripted. I had to strike fast. I needed the storage unit where the marriage contracts and psychiatric fabrications were hidden. The family WhatsApp group had mentioned it in passing, but the address was never explicitly named. That meant either Uncle Hassan's email or direct access to his phone. I chose the latter. During a community fair, I watched him from across the lawn, surrounded by elders and men of power. He laughed loudly, slapped shoulders, shook hands. An innocent patriarch in the eyes of everyone around him. I waited until he set his phone on the refreshment table, stepped away to speak with a guest. I grabbed it, ran into the nearest tent, connected it to my portable drive, and dumped everything I could. Emails, documents, encrypted folders. I slipped the phone back just as he returned, his hand brushing the table, none the wiser. Back at the motel, I combed through the files. Buried deep in a folder labeled Family Trust Documents was a rental agreement. Silverock Storage, Unit Number 212, registered under a shell company linked to one of the allied families. I drove there in the dead of night, bolt cutters in my trunk, gloves on my hands. The unit was stacked with bankers' boxes, each labeled in neat handwriting, Fatima Medical History, Noor, Contract, Layla, Postmortem. I opened one and nearly vomited. Photos, medical evaluations, fabricated diagnoses, birth and death certificates altered to hide the real timelines. Every child bride whose life had been lost, due to hemorrhage, suicide, infection, had been labeled mentally ill, unstable, tragic but inevitable. They weren't just covering up marriages. They were rewriting history. I took photos of everything. Drove to Priya's apartment, the nurse who had survived her own wedding chains and was now my only ally on the outside. She was waiting, flashlight in hand, her face hard with resolve. You can't expose this piecemeal, she said. They'll twist every fragment. We need the whole narrative. A documentary. Un dossier. Something undeniable. I left the evidence with her and returned to the motel, but it was too late. When I got back, the door was hanging open, the mattress slashed, my notes burned in the sink, spray painted above the bed. You're not saving anyone. They wanted me broken, but instead, I drove to the women's shelter. I found Jennifer, an ex-social worker turned underground resistance leader. I told her everything, about the fake madness, the marriages, the children trapped in gilded cages. She listened without blinking. You're not the first, she said, and you won't be the last. But if you're ready to go to war, I have contacts. She linked me with legal advocates, journalists from smaller platforms unafraid of retaliation, survivors now working in law enforcement and child protection. But the network struck again. Fatima's wedding video was shared across community platforms as a celebration of purity and obedience. The caption read, "A beautiful union sanctified by tradition." She looked hollow, but people celebrated anyway. Meanwhile, CPS received another forged report against me, this one with an audio file spliced to make me sound like I was coercing girls into hallucinations. Even my lawyer began doubting my case. It doesn't look good, she said. If they win conservatorship, they can legally hospitalize you, silence you indefinitely. My heart pounded. Then we go public, I told Priya. With everything. We coordinated with Jennifer's team. Journalists from an underground paper called The Ember Files agreed to publish a full exposé. We scheduled a video leak for the following Friday. Footage from Sarah's engagement, testimony from survivors, documents from the storage unit. But just 3 days before the release, the Ember Files office was raided. Computers seized, their website taken down, and the lead journalist vanished. Her car was found near the riverbank. Empty. My phone buzzed that night with a message. Stop or the next girl bleeds for your sins. The message was accompanied by a photo. Amira's school bag on the floor, her phone smashed, and her bare feet visible behind a locked door. They were using her now. My own sister, my own blood, as a hostage. The next day, I visited my mother. She met me at the door, cold as marble. You've brought shame, she said. Everything they say about you is true. I looked past her into the house. No sign of Amira. No sound. Just silence. A thick, heavy silence that screamed of captivity. She's not sick, I said quietly. None of them were. My mother tilted her head. Sickness comes in many forms. Disobedience is the most dangerous of all. I walked away that day, not as her son, but as her enemy. The war had crossed into bloodlines, and they had no intention of surrender. I knew the war wouldn't be won in silence, and certainly not through backdoor whispers anymore. The enemy, my own family, our culture's guardians of inherited oppression, had grown bolder. Their tactics sharpened with every counter I made. Amira, my own sister, was now a prisoner in our childhood home. Her once pretended madness exploited as justification to isolate her from the outside world. They'd perfected the method. My efforts to protect the girls had been weaponized and used against them. I had two options: vanish into exile or go louder than they could bury. I chose war, but not alone. Priya, Sarah's nurse-turned-resistance sister, brought in a media producer who had once escaped forced marriage herself. She now ran a semi-anonymous podcast with thousands of listeners worldwide, and she offered something invaluable. Reach. We'll live stream the truth, she told me. Not on your family's timeline, but on yours. In your words. With your evidence. But we couldn't do it from a studio. Too risky. Too traceable. We built our mobile setup inside a donated camper van, parked 3 cities over. Inside, soundproofed walls and encrypted uplinks masked the transmission location. As I sat in front of the camera, the files Sarah had collected opened on the laptop beside me. I saw her notebook again. Her neat handwriting, each page a grave marker for a life erased by tradition. I spoke. For 2 hours, uninterrupted. I told the story from the beginning. The weddings, the training of the girls, the madness, the bleach bottle, the rehearsal of demons, the quiet defiance turned resistance. Then I read the names out loud. Every girl we tried to save, and everyone who'd been buried. Finally, I revealed the network. 3 families across 3 states, linked by intermarriage and covered by doctored psychiatric records and forged medical files. I named Dr. Rashid, the man who'd signed dozens of fake evaluations. I showed photos of the marriage contracts retrieved from the storage unit, the bruises hidden under ceremonial dresses, the ring sizes fit for fingers that hadn't yet learned to write cursive. This, I said as I held up one tiny gold ring, was made for a child. A child. The stream ended with Sarah's message, pulled from the flash drive the EMT had found in her clenched hand. A video she recorded the night before her overdose. In it, she said, "If I don't survive, don't let my silence be permanent. Let it scream." And it did. The live stream was viewed by over 300,000 people within 24 hours. Refugee shelters began getting calls from other girls. Some were from my community. Others were from similar enclaves in different states. Girls who'd watched their sisters vanish. Girls who'd been told they were crazy when they cried. The truth didn't just go viral, it set off a wildfire. But my family responded the only way they knew how: scorched earth. My mother gave an exclusive interview to a religious channel, crying as she clutched Amira's diary. Planted pages again, filled with grotesque lies about me corrupting children and spreading satanic teachings. A few uncles held a press conference, denying everything, citing community persecution, demanding religious protection. And then Uncle Hassan did what I'd feared most. He filed an international custody petition, seeking to have the girls deported to Yemen under the guise of cultural reintegration and mental rehabilitation. If it passed, our girls would be lost forever. That's when we fought back in the courts. A team of pro bono lawyers, trauma-informed social workers, and even a few brave politicians filed an injunction. They used our footage, the medical forensics from Sarah's body, and the forged contracts to stop the petition. But the judge demanded testimony. Real voices. In person. The girls had to speak. Fatima was the first to agree. Her face still bore the emptiness of trauma, but her voice had regained its edge. At the hearing, she stood up, looked directly at Uncle Hassan and said, "You married me to a man who smelled like my grandfather. I bled for 5 days after the wedding. You call that honor?" Her words stunned the court into silence. Then Isla followed, then Noor. They say, "I thought I was alone. Now I know I'm not. And that makes every risk worth it. Because the only way to break generational curses is to name them, to scream, to burn the silence they fed us and rebuild something where girls don't have to fake madness to stay alive. They just have to speak. And we'll believe them." Thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe to Kindle Stories Official, where we share powerful stories of resistance, truth, and the voices too long silenced. Your support helps us spread awareness and inspire real change.